The airlock hissed as Kale stumbled through, one hand gripping the rail while the other held what could only be described as a very confused space bag that seemed determined to escape. The corridors of Vera 9 gleamed with the sterile precision of an orbital station designed by engineers who apparently thought clutter was a crime against the galaxy. Kale squinted at the blinking lights and polished metal walls, his survival in the endless void of deep space still making his legs feel like noodles under gravity. He had been declared dead, cremated in absentia on half a dozen star systems, yet here he was, very much alive and very much late for what he guessed would be a lecture on interstellar etiquette. From the observation deck above, Lysara stood, her posture rigid, long ears twitching with a precision that could have calibrated the station's grav sensors. She looked human in almost every way, which made her long, delicate ears all the more absurd and noticeable. Her violet eyes narrowed as she watched Kale inch toward the central hub, and for a moment she just froze. The words, whispered but somehow echoing across the steel walls, escaped her. "This is impossible." "You're alive, human?" A small robotic courier rolling nearby froze mid-beep, then loudly announced, "Error, emotional disruption detected," which somehow made the tension even funnier. Some of the alien crew behind her snickered. One of the technicians muttered, "I knew he'd come back, bet he brought snacks." Kale's grin, sheepish yet mischievous, spread as he waved awkwardly, almost tripping over the anti-gravity threshold. "Hey," he said, "I come in peace. Also, I apologize for dying. Didn't mean to ghost you all for, eternity." His voice was rough from vacuum exposure, yet it carried that same mischievous spark that Lysara remembered. She had been ready for a solemn, dramatic reunion, maybe tears, maybe accusations. But this was Kale, and he was already cracking jokes. Her long ears twitched in disbelief and a hint of irritation, which only made him grin wider. "Dr. Kale," she said, voice precise, but her words carried an edge of disbelief. You shouldn't be here. You were lost in the Malacher Rift. The Council declared." She stopped, flustered. Her ears flicked back, betraying her rising frustration. Kale raised a hand in mock surrender. I know. Reports of my demise were greatly exaggerated, very Shakespearean, really." He paused, frowning. "Though I do admit, being dead and suddenly alive has some serious paperwork implications." The station's AI chimed in with a dry monotone. "Warning, human humor detected. May cause minor irritation to alien sensibilities." Kale waved at the hovering drone. "Don't worry, I specialize in irritating sensibilities." Lysara led him through the hub, her steps precise, ears twitching every few seconds like antennae picking up radio static. Crew members whispered, some openly staring, others hiding their curiosity behind clipboards. One of the engineers muttered, "Is it just me, or does he look like he stepped out of a black hole and forgot to bring his pants?" Kale looked down at his baggy, singed coveralls, shrugged, and replied, "Fashion in zero gravity is complicated. Don't ask." The engineer snorted. As they moved through the corridors, Kale tried to make sense of the station, peering at alien consoles covered in shifting glyphs that looked like liquid metal. "Okay," he said, scratching his head. "So if I touch anything, will it explode or just mildly hum ominously?" Lysara gave him a sharp glance, but something like amusement flickered in her violet eyes. "Try not to hum anything," she said dryly, "especially not Ode to the Nebula. It interferes with the grav fields." At the main lab, Kale's eyes widened at the floating experimental pods, each containing partially constructed drones and specimens of sentient flora that squirmed gently in zero-G. He reached out and almost poked a tiny, glowing seedling. "Hey, this one looks friendly," he whispered. A robotic assistant zipped by and tapped his shoulder. "Friendly is a subjective term. Last human labeled it cute, and we lost 3 turrets and a security bot." Kale grinned, noted, still cute. Lysara shook her head, ears flicking sharply. She had spent years running simulations, commanding missions, and solving crises across multiple star systems, and now she was dealing with the impossible. A human who should be dead, who could somehow survive in a vacuum without a single scratch, who wandered into her hub cracking jokes about alien security protocols. It was frustrating, exasperating, and strangely interesting. As Kale fiddled with a console, his fingers accidentally activated a holographic map of the nearby star cluster, revealing energy anomalies spiraling across the edge of the station's sensor range. He squinted. "Okay, that can't be good, right?" He looked at Lysara, whose ears twitched sharply, the perfect signal of stress. Relax, he added with a grin. If it's dangerous, well, survive it, probably. Lysara pinched the bridge of her nose, an old habit that humans might have called exasperation. You have no concept of what probably entails in this sector, she muttered. Kale tilted his head. Nah, I get it. In space, probably is just a polite way to say maybe we're toast. The corners of her mouth twitched. Was that a smile or a warning? Hard to tell, especially with her ears twitching like erratic radar signals. The hub began to buzz with activity. Crew members hurried to their posts, some openly whispering bets on whether Kale would break something or someone within the first hour. Kale waved to a hovering drone. Hey, you there. But I can make you spin 3 times without anyone noticing. The drone hesitated, processed the risk, and then executed a perfect pirouette, making a small crew of aliens giggle. Lysara stepped closer to Kale, her voice low, the seriousness returning. This station is not a playground, human. He tilted his head, grinning. Noted, but consider it a confidence test. I've survived worse, trust me. She studied him, trying to measure how much of this bravado was true, and how much was the human charm that had caused her so much frustration years ago. He could have been dangerous, unstable, or completely harmless. Or all three. Just then, a soft alarm chimed across the station. The anomaly Kale had spotted earlier flared brighter on the screens, casting eerie, multicolored lights across the hub. Kale's grin faltered slightly. Okay, he said, voice suddenly serious. So maybe it's not just paperwork problems after all. Lysara's ears twitched with tension, and she moved to Kale's side, gesturing toward the console. We need to analyze it before it becomes a full-blown crisis. Kale leaned over the holographic display, accidentally bumping it with his elbow. The projection wobbled like a jelly in zero-G. Hey, I warned you about my humanness, he said, grinning sheepishly. As they worked side by side, their banter cutting through the growing tension, Lysara couldn't help but feel that somehow, despite the chaos and impossible odds, this very alive human, was exactly the kind of disruption her ordered life didn't know it needed. The station's alarms hummed, the lights flickered, and somewhere, an AI muttered about human foolishness. But for the first time in years, Lysara felt a spark of something unpredictable. Hope, maybe, or just the dangerous kind of curiosity that could get her into real trouble. Kale's reappearance had thrown the station into a peculiar kind of chaos, the kind where nobody was quite sure whether to panic, faint, or start betting on improbable outcomes. The Varen Council convened a meeting in the Grand Command Chamber, a vast space with floating holographic panels that rotated lazily above the polished floors. Lysara sat stiffly at her usual station, ears twitching like twin radars while Kale hovered at the edge of the room, trying to figure out which button would make the coffee machine levitate without setting off a small warp breach. So, Kale said, squinting at a panel of swirling data, what's the verdict? Am I officially alive or just a really persistent ghost? A counselor, 3 arms waving for emphasis, narrowed his eyes. You are alive, human, but your presence here may destabilize several protocols, including diplomatic relations with the Irath Collective, the Council of Sentient Asteroids, and my personal coffee maker. Kale raised a brow. Well, coffee maker diplomacy is a first, but I'm game. The chamber erupted into whispers, and one junior technician whispered loudly enough for a dozen to hear. He's either insane or charming, maybe both. Lysara shot the technician a sharp look, ears flicking in irritation. Kale grinned at her, clearly enjoying the small rebellion. After the meeting, Kale and Lysara found themselves assigned to investigate a series of odd disturbances in the station's experimental labs. Pods that had been stable for months were emitting sparks. Some specimens of sentient flora were spontaneously growing limbs that were never meant to exist. And rogue drones were performing impromptu ballet routines in zero-G. Kale clapped his hands together. Okay, so either I missed something in my human survival training or your station is haunted by caffeinated aliens. Lysara gave him a flat stare. The anomalies are serious, Kale. If you treat this like a joke— Relax, he interrupted. I have a PhD in surviving worse than this. Mostly involving rogue warp cores, exploding snack dispensers, and one unfortunate encounter with a space squid. Their first stop was the biolab, where a vine-like specimen had grown to the ceiling and was pulsing with a strange bioluminescence. Kale poked it with a gloved finger, and it shivered as if embarrassed. Hey, easy, he said. The vine shuddered again, then sprayed a faint mist that smelled like overcooked waffles. A lab technician groaned. It's the anomaly. We've tried everything. Kale tilted his head. Have you tried telling it a joke? Works on humans, sometimes on hostile entities. Lysara's ears twitched sharply, and she muttered, "Do not encourage him." Kale grinned. "Too late, I've already started." He leaned in close, whispering something to the plant. It emitted a soft glow, then calmed. The technician blinked. "I don't know what just happened." Kale shrugged. "Sometimes it's all about confidence." As they moved on, Lysara couldn't help but notice how Kale's antics were slowly breaking the tension among the crew. Even the station's usually stoic AI, which had been silently judging every human mistake since his arrival, made an audible beep of approval when Kale corrected a misaligned drone trajectory with a casual flick of his wrist. "Impressive," Lysara muttered, ears twitching. Kale grinned. "I call it style and desperation." By the time they reached the propulsion labs, the anomalies had grown stranger. Gravity fields fluctuated unpredictably, sending tools and small equipment floating in arcs that defied both logic and safety protocols. Kale caught a wrench mid-spin and tossed it back to the counter like a casual baseball player. "You know," he said, "for humans, zero-G juggling is considered an Olympic sport, just saying." Lysara rolled her eyes, but her ears twitched with something dangerously close to amusement. Then the real problem revealed itself. One of the energy cores that powered the experimental warp generator had begun emitting pulses that warped the local spacetime around it. Tiny floating particles twisted into Möbius-like loops, and the crew backed away in panic. Kale stepped forward, examining the core with that curious mix of caution and reckless bravado. "Okay, Lysara, what's the rule? Touch it. Don't touch it, dance around it singing a lullaby." Lysara pinched the bridge of her nose. "You are insufferable." Kale grinned. "Thank you, took me years to perfect." After a tense but comically chaotic attempt to stabilize the core, Kale managed to jury-rig a temporary fix using alien components in a way that no one, including Lysara, could have anticipated. The core hummed quietly, reality around it normalizing, and Kale wiped his hands with a flourish. And that, my friends, is how you make impossible look easy, also maybe slightly illegal. The lab erupted into relieved laughter, and Lysara's ears twitched, almost imperceptibly, in approval. She muttered, "You are absurd, human," but the corner of her mouth betrayed a smirk. Their next stop was the drone bay, where malfunctioning drones had taken to following crew members like overzealous pets. Kale tried to reason with them, waving his arms and making exaggerated gestures. "No, no, I am not edible, and yes, I promise your dance recital is cancelled." The drones paused, recalibrated, and one did a perfect pirouette. Lysara's ears flicked sharply, and she whispered under her breath, "Unbelievable." Kale grinned, bowing. Thank you, I do accept applause." Despite the laughter and minor chaos, Kale and Lysara's teamwork began to solidify. He relied on intuition, charm, and occasional recklessness, while she relied on precision, protocol, and a long-standing distrust of humans. They argued, they joked, they teetered on the edge of disaster more than once, but slowly a bridge of trust began to form. Kale's uncanny ability to survive, against both physics and common sense, was tempered by Lysara's calculated strategy, and together they began to unravel the pattern behind the anomalies. Someone or something was manipulating the station's systems from outside, using the energy anomalies as a signal. When they finally paused in the observation deck, Kale leaned against the rail, catching his breath. "So, alien conspiracy. Rogue energy pulses, or did I just mess up the warp core again?" Lysara's ears twitched sharply. "You did not mess up the core this time, human, but yes, we may have an external actor." Kale grinned. "External actor, huh? Does it like jokes? Because I'm great at those." Lysara ignored him, staring out at the swirling stars beyond the station. For the first time, she considered that Kale's return wasn't just chaos. It was the catalyst for something bigger, something neither of them fully understood. Kale followed her gaze, squinting at the distant anomaly twisting in the star cluster. "So," he said quietly, "we're about to go poking at whatever that is." Lysara's ears twitched like twin metronomes, and she nodded. "Yes, and you'd better not treat it like another joke." Kale smirked. "No promises, but I guarantee it'll be entertaining." The alarm blared across the station, a shrill, oscillating scream that made Kale leap like he'd been electrocuted. Lysara's ears twitched sharply, and she muttered, "Finally, something worth our attention." Kale's grin split across his face. "Oh, it's about time. I was beginning to think the universe had grown bored of me." He spun on his heel, accidentally bumping into a maintenance droid that squeaked in protest. "Sorry." I'll pay in star credits. The droid beeped indignantly, clearly unconvinced. They raced toward the observation deck, the corridor lights flickering as if the station itself were excited or terrified. The distant energy anomaly had grown into a visible rift in space, a twisting spiral of luminescent colors that pulsed rhythmically. It was beautiful, terrifying, and likely capable of destroying half the station if mishandled. Kale's eyes widened. Okay, that's definitely worse than exploding snack dispensers and rogue drones combined. Lysara rolled her eyes but didn't contradict him. The pattern of his humor following disaster had become familiar, and she grudgingly admitted, oddly comforting. The station's AI projected a floating hologram over the command console. External manipulator identified, Rogue Experimental Drone Collective. Objective, siphon core energy and destabilize Vera 9 warp generator. Kale tilted his head. So basically a really bad party guest with high-tech manners. Lysara's ears twitched sharply. And you're planning to negotiate with it? Kale shrugged. Well, it's either that or we start improvising with gravity grenades, and I don't think the station insurance covers interstellar property damage. They suited up in zero-G suits, Lysara efficient and precise. Kale attempting flamboyant heroics that nearly ended with him stuck headfirst in a maintenance hatch. Need a hand? Lysara asked, one eyebrow raised, ears flicking like twin antennae. Kale emerged, laughing. Nah, I've got it mostly. There's a slight chance I might have wedged myself into a very technical situation. Lysara sighed but helped anyway, muttering under her breath, humans. They navigated the external maintenance tunnels, tethered to the station like spiders skimming the edge of the void. The rogue drones swarmed the warp generator, their lights flashing like an erratic symphony. Kale waved his hands at them. Hey, party, over, drinks are gone, time to leave. One drone paused mid-spin, as if offended, then resumed its chaotic dance. Lysara groaned. You're going to get us killed with sarcasm alone. Kale winked. It's a strategy. Lysara directed the station's auxiliary drones to intercept, and Kale improvised, using alien repair tools as makeshift disruptors. Sparks flew, magnets snapped, and for a moment it seemed impossible that anyone would survive. Then Kale yelled, Now, Lysara, hit the core's containment field. She executed the maneuver with precision, and the rogue drones scattered like startled starlings. The energy rift began to collapse, the station stabilizing as gravity returned to normal. Kale floated back toward her, grinning despite the singed sleeve on his suit. Well, that was fun. You know, if chaos were a sport, I'd win gold. Lysara's ears twitched sharply. You are impossible, she said, voice soft, and her violet eyes held something unspoken. Back inside the station, the crew cheered, some clapping, others nervously laughing at Kale's antics. Lysara watched him navigate the crowd, realizing something she hadn't admitted before. His reckless humor and impossible survival had forced the station to adapt in ways it never could with protocol alone. She had relied on him, and he had relied on her. The partnership had grown into something unexpectedly effective, and she couldn't deny the strange warmth she felt toward him. Kale wandered to the central hub, leaning against the console. You know, he said, eyes on the slowly normalizing anomaly display, I might actually get used to being alive again, might even enjoy it. Lysara's ears flicked, and she smiled faintly. Just don't make a habit of disappearing. He laughed. I can't promise that, but I'll try, mostly for you, obviously. She snorted, trying to hide the smile that threatened to break her composure. Flattery won't save you from the next council meeting. Over the next few hours, the station returned to its usual rhythm. Drones were repaired, the flora stabilized, and Kale's unorthodox methods were quietly documented in the AI's archives, much to the amusement and confusion of future crews. Lysara walked alongside him, ears flicking as she examined the subtle changes in him. He was more patient, less frantic, though still chaotic in the best ways. You've changed, she said quietly. Your survival, it isn't just luck anymore. You think, you adapt, you care. Kale tilted his head. I learned from the best strategist I know. She shot him a sharp look, then allowed a faint grin. Don't push it. In the quiet of the observation deck, they watched the stars stretch across the void. Kale pointed toward the distant spiral of light that had once threatened the station. See that? Nothing beats staring down a cosmic disaster and living to joke about it. Lysara's ears twitched, a subtle signal that she was pleased. You have a strange definition of achievement, she said, but it works. Kale leaned against the rail, relaxed for the first time in years. I think I've finally found a place where being alive actually makes sense. And well, maybe it's the chaos that keeps things interesting. You too, Lysara, just saying. She didn't answer immediately, instead allowing herself a small, amused smirk. Maybe, she said, chaos can be tolerable. As the station drifted through the quiet of space, Kale and Lysara stood side by side. An unlikely duo who had survived the impossible, unraveled a conspiracy, and discovered that trust and humor could bridge even the widest gap between species. Kale's laughter echoed softly, blending with the soft hum of the station. Lysara's ears twitched in subtle rhythm, a silent acknowledgement that life, unexpected, dangerous, and ridiculous, was worth living and worth laughing through. The anomaly was gone, the rogue drones neutralized, and the station hummed with renewed stability. Kale had survived, Lysara had adapted, and the bridge between human and Varen understanding had grown